Finally, I want to look at Turnus's Aristeia. As we mentioned in the Iliad, the Aristeia are those extended scenes of glorious battle, glorious fighting on the part of a hero. So we have Diomedes and Agamemnon have these moments of Aristeia in which the gods are blessing them and they are able to fight victoriously. Here we have Turnus, who is not the same side as our hero, having an Aristeia. He's having a moment where he's able to be heroic and claim lots of lives for his side. Now, there's two different things that the audience would have been most likely feeling at this moment for this Aristeia that it was different from the Greek epics. In the Greek epics, it's really interesting that Hector receives an Aristeia, that we have this moment of extended glory on his side, or that we have sympathy with characters like Sarpedon and Glaucus, because they're on the other side. So a Greek warrior, you would assume, a Greek poet would only be uplifting his side of the battle, and yet we see beyond the walls of Troy, we have the sympathetic moments with Priam, we have the sympathetic moments with Andromache. They are not painted as the villains. If anything, we usually like the Trojans more than we'd like the Greeks. And yet here we have a different audience. The audience would have been Roman. They are Italians, essentially. And now they're hearing about their ancestry from the Trojan side, but that's a fictional ancestry. So they don't want the Italians to be villainized. They don't want Turnus's side to be looked down upon. It makes much more sense that Turnus has an Aristeia than it did that Hector had an Aristeia, right? Zeus grants, that's how we understand why Hector has one. Zeus says, I'm going to give this day to Hector because then he's going to die. And so he gets one long day where he's going to fight victoriously, and then Achilles is going to kill him and it's going to be horrible for him and they're going to disrespect his body. But then the whole story ends with his funeral. So if Turnus becomes our Hector redone, we should expect that he will have very similar moments to Hector. So he tries to burn the ships just like Hector tried to burn the ships. Only this time Turnus almost succeeds, except they turn into dolphins, nymphs. And Hector got close to burning the ships, and this, of course, signed his death warrant. When Turnus has his Aristeia, he is responding to the shot of Ascanius, who shot his brother-in-law, who had taunted the Trojans. The Latin who taunted the Trojans, twice beaten Phrygians, don't you feel embarrassed to how we keep you pinned behind your fence? You fight with us to take your wives. And then he calls them, Trojan women. And he gets shot straight through the neck. And this inspires Turnus really to fight not just for Lavinia, because of course Aeneas isn't there, but to fight against the Trojans who just shot a friend on his side. And his fury overcomes him. And that's what I want to make sure we emphasize, is that remember how fury, when it overtakes you, is not a good. So there is still some negative painting of Turnus in these moments. He also calls himself Achilles. He gives claim that this wrath is very similar to Achilles. He has a frenzy, a demented bloodlust, right? And the poet notes that if this bloodlust, if this frenzy, right, the wrath of Achilles that is kind of being embodied in Turnus in this moment, which again is this inversion. He is our Hector example, but he's also calling himself Achilles. He's having a wrath that is more in line with Achilles versus a nobility that would have been in line with Hector. So there's lots of parallels, I think, between both sides that we're seeing in Turnus. Another reminder that we are hearing Virgil's story and we're not just hearing a repeat of the things that have come before. And Turnus misses his moment to actually beat the Trojans because he could have unbolted the doors behind him and let all of his comrades in, right? All the fellow Latins. They would have come in and destroyed the Trojans while Aeneas was gone. Instead, his fury prevents his ability to see. The wrath, the bloodlust, the frenzy keeps him fighting solo rather than thinking of the people around him. Again, piety being juxtaposed with fury. Fury and passion leads people to not be virtuous, to not think piously, Piety is about thinking about those who you're in community with and keeping order in your community. So he doesn't let in the whole community of warriors who are waiting outside. He thinks only of his own fight. He calls himself Achilles. Come hand to hand if you dare, and tell Priam, in other words, when you get to hell, tell Priam that you met Achilles up here too. And he takes on the wrong model for his action, and instead of acting like Hector, he actually acts like Achilles. His bloodlust leads him astray, and then he has to jump into the river to flee the maddening Trojans that all come down on him and that could have taken over him. He flees in this moment, and this pretty much closes book 9, and then we will ascend to the council of the gods in book 10 and see this not just from Turnus' perspective, not from the Romans' perspective, but we will actually get a divine view of things.